Chapter 32. This means war. Are you kidding me? Sitting up on his bed, Sephiroth leaned over a very naked Crimson Commander, magical cell phone pressed up against his ear. They had finally gotten a hold of Rufus since Reno the dumbass had left his phone with Zack. Reno had made a hell of an impression on the Malfoys, it seemed, even so far that Narcissa had taken a shine to him. Rufus refused to say how, but he must have been putting his Turk acting skills to work. There was no way the Malfoys would accept the foul-mouthed slum rat. He had actually managed to impress them so much that all of them had been invited over to the Malfoy residence for the day. While normally this would have horrified Harry, Sephiroth, the ever-present daredevil, was jumping for joy at the prospect of slipping in the Malfoy home and never once being detected. Oh, this could seriously be so much fun. His skin was starting to get goosebumps all along the exposed flesh as the Mako started to pump in his vein. Seeing those brilliant cat-slit eyes glowing in excitement, Genesis sat up slightly, his arms coming to wrap around Sephiroth's waist, his chin resting on his shoulder. He could hear both sides of the conversation perfectly thanks to his Mako enhancements. "Seph, you're not seriously. You are, aren't you?" A brilliant evil sadistic smile crossed Sephiroth's lips, his eyes shifting to gaze down at Genesis from their corners. "Tell your parents we would be delighted, Rufus. We'll be there shortly." Flipping his phone shut, Sephiroth twisted in his lover's arms, kissing him deeply. "Ready to go have some fun?" "I was having fun here." Genesis pouted. He didn't want to get dressed and go over to some purebloods mansion. "Well, tough, you're in charge of us today, and I'm in charge of you." Genesis bristled at that, ice blue eyes narrowing into a glare. "Since when?" "Since you're the commander and I'm the general. And you bottom right top." Flushing the same brilliant scarlet as his duster, Genesis released him, grumbling about cocky no-good generals. Seeing he has won again, he pushed himself from the bed and went about finding his clothes. As much as he wanted to wear his battle leathers, it might not make the best first impression. Today the house was completely empty aside from the Weasleys, Seth, the triplets, Laz and General. Most of the Order had been sent out on missions and the Molly was at the Ministry with her husband. Jen was left in charge of them. Molly should have known that was a very big mistake. Pulling on one of his favorite sweaters from Shinra, Sephiroth charged down to get the others. Ron wouldn't be able to go as he was too easily recognized, and Sis now would probably try and kill Lucius for her second year. The others though, oh, they would be more than happy, he was sure, especially Zack. Moving into the kitchen, Sephiroth smirked, seeing just the group he wanted was down there. Ron must have still been asleep and Sis now was most likely up practicing with her weapon. "Hey guys, who's up for aiding the Malfoys?" "Draco, when did you say that Reno's friends would be arriving?" Lucius was standing in the drawing room, Narcissa sitting in her normal spot on the couch. Draco was standing off to the side as Reno had moved out to have a smoke. "They should be arriving." He fell silent as the fire in the hearth flared to life, its crimson and orange flames turning brilliant green. "Right now." Stepping back, he smiled, seeing a very familiar graceful figure stepping from the fireplace, not a single ounce of ash sticking to ivory skin. Tseng. Brushing non-existent ash from his eyes, Tseng opened steel-gray eyes. Instantly they swept the room, taking in every possible exit and the room's layout and inhabitants. It had always amazed Rufus how his Turks could take in an entire room and asses it in a matter of seconds. Tseng had actually been here once before as Blaze, and so he knew the general layout of the room, but he needed to pretend to be his first time here. Looking over the young man, Lucius eyed him with a critical eye as he did all that entered his house. Oriental bloodlines, that was obvious. His steel-colored eyes were completely emotionless as they swept around the room. If they had been amber, it would have been like looking into an eagle's eyes. They were sharp and seemed to miss nothing as they passed around before landing on them. Even though the boy smiled, it was painfully obvious this man had mastered his emotions, and those eyes. Those were the eyes of someone that had taken life. He would need to keep an eye on this one. Maybe if he were lucky they could pull into their cause, they could use men like him. Welcome to our home. I'm Lucius Malfoy. Tseng in turn bowed low, his long black hair falling over his shoulder. Thank you for the kind welcoming and allowing me into your home. I am Tseng Akira. It is a pleasure to meet you. Tseng Akira, you're the young man that Reno is living with. Narcissa stood, her blue eyes watching the man. He was beautiful even if he was in mule clothing. A soft chuckle left Tseng's throat, his steel eyes softening slightly as he regarded Narcissa. She was always a kind woman. A little misguided but a very loving mother. Yes, I have taken the little fox under my paw. Hey boss man. You made it all right. Reno moved back into the room, smiling brightly as he moved over to Tseng and Draco. A single black brow rose, seeing Reno was already perfectly at home here even though his new family was absolutely hated by them. Reno, flu travel is not exactly rocket science. Reno rolled his eyes, seeing Tseng was guarded. He probably would be for most the time up here. You did come over from the States, yo. That's not exactly a short trip. Moving away from the fireplace, Tseng actually rolled his eyes, slowly loosening up. Reno. I do know how to apparat to a closer location. Shut up, yo. Reno growled, but it was playfully. He had dropped back into his normal slum rat talk since not even Tseng knew about his past. Chuckling, Rufus shook his head. It always entertained him how Tseng and Reno interacted. Even though Reno saw him as a second father, they tended to act more like an old married couple. Hearing the fire flare up once more, the group looked over. Hearing a very recognizable yip, both Reno and Tseng unconsciously moved to stand in front of the fireplace. This was an intercept, as they knew who was going to come barreling out the minute he was up. Sure enough, the minute the flames died down, a very excited hyperactive puppy came barreling out and full-on tackled Reno, sending them both somersaulting across the drawing room and into the far wall. Hitting with a hard thwack, the two fell apart in a tangle of limbs and groans. Zachary. Tseng groaned, seeing the unchecked soldier strength send them both into the far wall. Laughing, Zach untangled himself from Reno, who was also laughing as well. Goddamn pup, you're gonna break something. Like the wall. Shut up, slum rat. Zach pushed himself onto his feet and reached down, pulling the slighter man back up onto his feet effortlessly. He was wearing a sweater very similar to his old soldier sweater, allow his arms to be seen. He had regained nearly all his original muscle mass thanks to the Mako in his blood. Please forgive him, that is Zachary Fair, aka Puppy. He's very hyperactive and a very short attention span. Tseng said, turning to look at the two Malfoys. He and Reno were huge practical jokers at their old school. Lucius could only blink. Never in his life had he seen that type of power from anyone, not even that half-breed Hagrid. Zach had hit with enough force to send them both tumbling across the massive room and into the wall. What was even more shocking was neither appeared to be injured. Zach actually looked like he was very physically powerful. It was rare to see a wizard that built up. Narcissa was smiling softly, seeing how the massive man acted like his nickname. He didn't appear to be stupid, simply hyperactive. Releasing Reno, Zach bounded over to the Malfoys, instantly taking up Lucius' hand, shaking it, his grip strong on his hand. Thanks for inviting us. Releasing the shocked Lucius' hand, he moved over to Narcissa, gently taking her hand. You have a very lovely house. From what I have seen as I tumbled across the ground. He flashed her a brilliant puppy smile, releasing her hand. Narcissa actually giggled slightly at that. Zach was one of those that it was impossible to hate him. Puppy, no hitting on my mother, Rufus said, sending him an amused glance. Zach's eyes widened and he grabbed his chest in mock horror. Draco. How you wound me. While your mother is a beautiful woman, I do have my honor. The group standing in the room all groaned, Reno rolling his eyes. Don't you dare start an angel lecture about dreams, pride and honor. But that is the core of all soldier. If you want to be a hero, you must have dream and month. Draco had moved up and pushed a pillow over Zach's face, muffling his voice, glaring at the pillow. I said no fair. Laughing, Zach pulled away from the pillow. Would you prefer infinite in mystery is the gift of there? Laughing loudly, Zack dodged away as several throw pillows from the couch and chairs came pelting towards him. Don't you dare start quoting Loveless You. We get enough of that from Commander Asshole. Reno was pointing a finger at Zack, who was still laughing from behind the couch where he had ducked. Slum rat, are you insulting my precious play once again? Genesis stepped from the fire, ice blue eyes narrowed on Reno as he flicked a tiny bit of ash from the fire off his auburn hair. He was dressed in normal clothes, though he had on a mandarin-collared red leather jacket. It was similar to his duster in color and texture but was much shorter. Of course you. Reno though was unconsciously moving back behind Tseng. Don't star huckin' fireballs. You don't want to ruin someone else's house, you. Snorting, Genesis tossed his head arrogantly and moved out of the way of the fireplace so Sephiroth could get through. Of course not, slum rat. I am far better bred than to do that in another person's house. Though do not count your luck if you step outside. Moving over to Lucius, Genesis extended his hand. Forgive my manners, I am Genesis Rhapsodos. Thank you for inviting us into your beautiful home. Taking the red leather-clad hand, Lucius could feel the corded muscle the man had. He could also feel the sheer magical power just pouring off the man in waves. Something about the name was familiar. He had heard it in passing around the ministry. He had been hanging around Hogwarts and had the ministry on edge. He could honestly feel why. The man exuded more awe power than Dumbledore or Voldemort. Of course, we welcome you to Malfoy Manor. Are there perchance any more due to arrive? Pulling his hand back, Genesis motioned towards the fireplace. One more should be on his way. No, slum rat, the triplets aren't coming. Yazoo isn't feeling well, so the others stayed behind. Lazar does well to make sure Kadaj doesn't try and decapitate anyone. Or run them through with sober. Moving over to Narcissa, Genesis bowed low, sweeping her hand up gently and laying the gentlest of kiss on her knuckles. And what might your name be? Unable to help herself, Narcissa actually blushed a slight pink. Narcissa Malfoy. Flashing her a brilliant smile, he straightened up, releasing her hand. Narcissa, the Greek name for daffodil if I am not mistaken. Oh, give it a rest, Rhapsodos. Reno rolled his eyes, seeing Genesis was behind his normal charming self. Reno. I am about to start throwing more than just fireballs at you. Gen man, don't be mean. We came over to enjoy ourselves, don't be a killjoy. Pulling away from Narcissa, Jen leveled Zack with a dark glare, causing the puppy to yip and dive behind Tseng. Zack. I am not a human shield. Yes you are. Laughing, Rufus shook his head and moved over as the fire flared up for the final time. Reno said that Angel couldn't get away from his grandmother, so they knew he wasn't coming. Same with Rude or Elena. Told you he had strange friends. He smiled to his parents. He was thankful to see they weren't flipping out with how this group was acting. Lucius was looking over the group. He had to admit, seeing the way this group bantered with each other, including his son, and seeing Draco smile like he was made dealing with them bearable. Narcissa seemed to find them funny, though he would have to watch out for Rhapsodos. He could be a danger. Perhaps he could do some snooping while the man was here, find out some information that the ministry wasn't. As the flames died out and the last figure stepped out, Lucius found himself simply staring at the strange youth that stepped from the fire. While the man himself was not all that strange, it was his eyes, glowing green cat's-lit eyes. It was remarkable how much they looked like the Dark Lord's. The man was all grace and power. His power poured off in hotter waves than Genesis did, and just like Tseng, his face was a perfect emotionless mask. Emotions perfectly controlled his face and eyes, revealing nothing. Hey Sephiroth, you got some ash in your hair, you? Reaching up, Sephiroth absently brushed his hair off, scattering the small ash particles up into the air. I am surprised you could see it, considering the color of my hair. Oh yes, Sephiroth had dropped back into his old attitude. His voice was aloof and cold. Ah, come on, General Hotness. Don't go all general on us. Loosen up, yo. Ow. Reno lurched forward, clutching the back of his head. What was that for, Tseng? Behave yourself, Reno. Yeah, bite me. Wait. Don't you dare. Save that for the Chocobo. Seeing that evil smile tilting his boss's lips, Reno swallowed loudly before tearing from the room. Smirking, Tseng looked over to Zack, seeing he was laughing, sharing a silent nod. The two bolted after Reno. Laughing loudly, Rufus charged after them. Come on, Seth. We leave them to their own devices, they are going to kill each other. Smirking slightly, Sephiroth nodded to Lucius and Narcissa before tearing out with all his soldier speed, Genesis right behind him. Watching the door shut behind the blurs that were the children, she turned back, seeing the paleness of her husband. Lucius? Narcissa, do you remember the last meeting with the Dark Lord? Frowning slightly, she tried not to remember them. She honestly despised the snake, but she stood by her husband. Something about an item belonging to a powerful dark wizard being kept in the ministry. Not just any dark wizard. A wizard so dark and so feared his legend continues on today, though his name has been lost to all but a rare few. Moving across the room, his fingers moved along the massive bookcase that lined one wall. The Dark Lord had left a book here for safekeeping. Lucius, as curious as he was, had flipped through it once, trying to figure out what the Dark Lord's plans were. Finding the book, he flipped it open, seeing the boy had stirred a memory in him. Hearing the name. Finding the page, he felt himself paling even more. It was ripped from another book, but a picture was shoved into the pages of an ancient dark wizard's book. It was an ancient photograph that had been copied onto a book page. It showed a massive group of men, all in varying colors of the same uniform, except the three up front. Moving over to stand next to her husband, Narcissa looked down and gasped, her eyes instantly picking up what her husband was seeing. At the front of the group, sitting on the ground, was Genesis, Rhapsodos and Sephiroth. Lucius? Scanning the picture still, Lucius's eyes widened slightly, seeing the young boy everyone had called Puppy standing up among the group of purple uniformed men, the same brilliant smile on his face. Shifting over to the side where another group stood, he was shocked to see both Reno and Tseng standing there in black suits. But what was even more shocking was the young man standing directly in front of Tseng. White suit and a familiar black guard hound at his feet. That apostrophe S. That's Draco. It's impossible. This picture is over 9,000 years old. The two Malfoys looked at each other, both confused and horrified by what they were seeing. Racing out onto the lawns, the two Genova projects stopped, laughter bubbling up into their throats as they watched Reno currently being whitewashed by Tseng in the deep snow that covered the grounds. Leaning down, Sephiroth slowly packed snow into his hands, forming a ball. Making sure his steps were silent as they could be, he slowly snuck up to where Tseng was still covering Reno in snow. Seeing his chance as the Turk director was distracted, he grabbed the collar to Tseng's dress shirt and shoved the snow down his back before smashing the snowball against his back. Tseng actually let out a shriek and leapt off Reno, shaking his shirt, trying to get all the snow out of it. Growling, he rounded on Sephiroth, those dark steel eyes glinting with pure murder. You do realize this means war.
I'm glad you enjoyed that video/gameplay. Just remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. Until next time, goodbye!